Take another photograph and document a life that's right. And ways consist of simple things, the days of black and white. And faces from a humble past.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Pardon me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Talking Guff podcast with myself, your host, Ruben Django Pouch. Today, I'm going to bang out a little solo effort, a current affairs episode on my own. Some of the affairs or issues we're talking about mightn't seem entirely current, like some of them happened more than a week ago, shall we say. But if this is a podcast I've tried to produce for the last 2 weeks or so. I actually recorded the podcast probably this day last week, but it was on a day where we got some pretty bad news here at Talking Guff. A friend of mine and a friend of the podcast's suddenly and really sadly passed away. I'd just like to take a moment to say peace be the journey, Eggy. Still quite shocked about the situation. But look, we're going to talk about a few topics today. So I work in the food service industry. I've been working in the food service industry as a chef for quite some time now. And it is an industry that has been totally eviscerated by coronavirus and the restrictions put in place to combat the spread of coronavirus. Completely eviscerated the restaurant game. And it was an industry that was tough anyway for chefs and business owners alike. And so who knows what the landscape of that is going to look like in 6 to 12 months. But right now there's a sort of fast food revolution happening, and it's definitely advantageous to people. People are definitely have adapted to this takeaway food revolution and are making money. It's very successful for them. Now, one thing I notice is that success, the success of the people with the resources to adapt to the restrictions, that is built on the hard work, the skill sets and intellectual property of normal, hard working class people. And like I said, it's to the greatest advantage of people with the most resources. And it's done under the guise of, sure, you're lucky to have a job. And this is a narrative that I would be very unhappy with, because I understand that people, that's the way it goes. The people with resources set up the businesses and the shit munchers work them. I get that. And you try and get yourself, it's a fucking layer cake, mate. Get up, eat a little less shit. Get up, eat a little less shit. And eventually, you don't even know what shit tastes like. But the fact of the matter is that I understand that's capitalism, I suppose, but the disparity seems to be getting bigger. It looks more and more unfair. The work I have to do has grown, and the money I get paid to do that work has depleted. And so I feel that that's a microcosm for who will provide the pound of flesh to combat the financial rack and ruin of the COVID restrictions, because that's what's coming down the pipes. Financial rack and ruin. And I can't help but feel that the burden of that, financially, mentally, physically, spiritually, will be laid on the shoulders of the working class people. And I think, like I said, the way the industry has gone is already a microcosm for that. It's built on the toil of normal everyday people. And then there are those people who toil and sweat and bleed for these companies and these people, and it happens on a local and national level. They will be told that they're lucky to have a job. But then, if I'm lucky to have a job, how lucky is the person driving around in a Land Rover or, with an iPhone 10 making business calls and 2,000 euros worth of clothes adorn their body? Let's talk about lucky. So, we have been in a situation like this before in 2008 when the banks gambled effectively with our money and lost. It was the working class people who had to suffer the most austerity. It was the working class people who had to shoulder the burden of that financial disaster and that fallacy. Now, I can't help but feel that that's what's going to happen again. Now, I'm going to read you a little something because I thought it was really interesting. Rob Slattery, the handsome little devil, who obviously was the production technician or whatever the fuck you want to call it on the technical ones and twos for Talking Guff, sent me this thing which I thought was really interesting, and it seemed to raise a load of points. So let's just have a read of it. And it's a bit long, but I'm going to read it anyway. It's a parody or a spin, if you will, on the choose life thing from Train Spotting. Choose a fast car, choose a fucking whatever. You remember that? Well, this is a sort of like a redo for a contemporary real times. Choose never owning your own home. Choose €1,200 bed sits. Choose co-living. Choose 12 square metre rooms and sharing a kitchen with 30 people. Choose landlords. Choose paying someone else's mortgage. Choose living in a shed in the back of your parents' garden. Choose 0-hour contracts. Choose crap wages. Choose being priced out of education. Choose dole queues. Choose hotels. Choose student accommodation. Choose no creative spaces. Choose no nightclubs. Choose no venues. Choose 60-hour work weeks. Choose no pay for student nurses. Choose unpaid internships. Choose gentrification. Choose Wow Burger. Choose being priced out of the area you grew up in. Choose 10,000 plus homeless. Choose food banks. Choose direct provision. Choose living in a tent. Choose dying on the street and becoming a statistic. Choose Simon Harris's TikTok. Choose neoliberal politics. Choose your stolen vaccine for the boys. Choose golf dinners. Choose photo ops. Choose never getting laid because you still live at home in your 30s. Choose demolition of protected sites. Choose no mental health funding. Choose waiting 6 months to see a psychiatrist. Choose the cervical cancer scandal. Choose no restitution for mother and baby home survivors. Choose the world's most expensive children's hospital. Choose developers. Choose no public toilets. Choose no loitering. Choose no bins. Choose trampolines. Choose minimum unit alcohol pricing. Choose the Vinters Association. Choose Leo the Leak. Choose backhanders and brown envelopes. Choose high interest mortgage rates. Choose the Davy Six. Choose Amazon, Apple and Facebook. Choose fuck all corporation tax. Choose the PRTB. Choose evictions. Choose derelict sites. Choose vulture funds. Choose depression. Choose alienation. Choose isolation. Choose losing all your mates to emigration. Choose no future. Choose Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Now, that's a really, that just touched on so much there. So many real issues that have been swept under the carpet for the last 12 months that are still there. And so let's have a little talk about a couple of them, because I think there's a lot in there that's really interesting, right? Like I said, these are real issues. They were here 12 months ago. They haven't gone away. They've been swept under the carpet, because coronavirus has taken over every facet of our lives. Every, bit of information we get seems to be related to coronavirus, and there's no room or oxygen for anything else, any of these real fucking issues that are also going on. Not to say that I think coronavirus isn't a real issue, but there are other real social and financial issues working in tandem with that situation that still deserve our attention, probably still deserve our outrage. And, we need to identify, highlight these issues and hold the perpetrators to rights, in my opinion. So, this time last year, 10,000 plus people were homeless in this country. They're still there. And in fact, it looks like that number is going to get worse. But even that there are 10,000 plus people, and I've said this before, 10,000 plus people living in temporary accommodation in a country of 5 million with a GDP of 350 billion is unacceptable. It's a fallacy. It's an international laughingstock for our government. And they were about to feel the retribution of that this time last year, or sort of January of last year, when they effectively lost the first round of our general election. And then I've said before that they've sort of enacted a power grab through coronavirus to sort of save themselves, save their own skin, increase their political capital. That's what I feel is going on. As I said, these people have not gone away. These people are still living in temporary accommodation, going to jobs, doing whatever they can to survive. And right now, all over even County Dublin, people, including whole families, some of which have been living where they are for 16 years, have continuously and consistently paid rent. I think one of the families I read about, the guy has a sick wife and 3 special needs children. And these people are being evicted from their homes. This is happening in Dunleary, it's happening in Richmond Street, and it's happening in Ballsbridge, to name but a few. And at the heart of this situation, wealthy individuals are making bank. And I just feel a couple of things. If we already have a housing crisis where 10,000 people are living in temporary accommodation, that's one thing, that's bad enough. Then you throw into the midst an international health crisis, a pandemic, and again, the unemployment, the job loss, etc., 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 that goes with that. And then you think to yourself, people, it's bad enough like that they have to live in some of these circumstances, but some people are being evicted from this situation and there's nowhere for them to go. They are going to fall between the cracks, literally. In this country, in the 21st century, they have nowhere to go. And these people work and stuff like this. It's not as if they're fucking degenerates. You know, it just seems psychotic or sociopathic that in that situation, our government would allow this to happen, would allow people to be evicted from their homes when they've paid rent on a consistent basis for over a decade. It fucking boggles the mind. I remember when they said they were going to build 10,000 affordable homes, and another thing is now somehow affordable homes are 400,000 and 500,000 euro. That's affordable, apparently. Like €500,000 is affordable housing in this country when minimum wage is €10 and 10 cents an hour. Do the fucking maths, you know? As I just mentioned, at the crux or the heart of these evictions, wealthy individuals are making more money for themselves. And I said before at the start about people having the resources to adapt, and that's sort of how capitalism works. But again, and you might argue, well, the man owns the building, he can do what he wants or whatever. But I just think if he's been making X amount of money for however many years off the back of these people and their hard work, he shouldn't be able to, at the drop of a hat, especially in the midst of the situation we're in now, to forcibly evict those people from their homes in order to make just a little bit more money. I'm not saying, we should be communists, but I think capitalism shouldn't be to the detriment of normal everyday people. The people who are the people who are benefiting from these evictions, they shouldn't be allowed to operate under impunity from our government. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to me. A real turning point in this housing thing that I saw, or how the state was going to deal with the situation, or how little empathy they had for people in those situations, a real turning point for me was when, and I don't know if people remember this, it must be about 2 or 3 years ago, where the guards chaperoned masked sort of private security operatives in evicting, I think they were squatters now in fairness, but the fact that the guards chaperoned these balaclavaed fucking juice heads who forcibly removed these people from a premises, to me, it just was rotten. It just stank. And again, I've said before, and that's it in real time. The guards are the heavy hand of an institution designed to impoverish the working classes. Like, that's what they do. That's their remit. That's their job description. And that really proved that for me. And again, it really proved sort of how psychotic our own state, our own, elected individuals could be when it came to the lowest rungs of the social and financial ladder. So, as I said, and that's only a few cases I've given, I'm sure if you looked into it more, you'll find there are people being evicted under the same circumstances across the country, which is a fucking disgrace. And to make those matters worse, massive amounts, and this is crazy now, this is sort of crazy stuff, massive amounts of newly developed property are being snapped up by these global economic funds. We're in the middle of a housing crisis, and the houses that do get built are bought en masse by external economic global funds, and they buy those houses to rent. They're not for sale. They're not part of your affordable housing. Those companies have bought those houses to rent, and they will rent them at the highest possible market bracket. And effectively what they're doing is that they're keeping the market inflated by doing so, because if they own all the properties and they're only willing to rent them, they can keep this rental bubble going and make as much money as they want. But again, it's to the detriment of people who are living in fucking hotel rooms in the Ramada or wherever. It's disgusting. And it should be against the fucking law. It happened in 2 housing estates in North Dublin. One was called Bayview and another called I can't remember. And then if you read a little thing here, havoc in the housing market, an article in the Irish Examiner, havoc in the housing market, thousands of homes snapped up by investors, with up to 1 billion worth of housing sold to institutional investors before a brick is laid. This is the thing, they're bought off. You don't have a chance. You, the normal working class person who goes out and, sort of signs up for the dream, signs into the societal fucking narrative, you don't have a fucking chance, because some fucking billionaire from overseas or group of billionaires has already bought all the houses off plan before you even had a sniff, and they're going to rent them at the highest possible price to you or whoever. And, it's gross. It's not right. When are we going to say this is not good enough? And fucking, what's his name? The housing minister, is it Darragh O'Brien? But our housing minister knows about these outside investor funds snapping up houses, and he's sort of on the fence going, oh, well, obviously it's a bad thing. Obviously it's a fucking bad thing. And yet he's allowing it to happen, because we can't really say no to these people. They're more important than having a home for every man, woman and child on the island. Also, a thing that happened in the last couple of weeks that was crazy was the HSE, the health service, the HSE was a victim of a cyber attack. And now, this is sort of double-edged for me, because I'm all for fucking discourse. I'm all for, hackers fucking with centralised power and wealth. I love that. Great, have at it, lads. But the real ramifications of this cyber attack on the HSE is that normal, everyday, sick people are affected negatively. My own mother couldn't have her scan for her cancer today because the HSE is in the shits. They don't have the visuals or whatever. The system is down. So that's what really... why couldn't you fucking hack the banks, lads? Why couldn't you hack the social welfare system, give everyone a free fucking week at a pub or something? Why did you have to, commit a cyber attack or cyber crime, whatever the fuck it's called, that will have a negative effect on the most vulnerable members of society? You've fucked up there, lads. That was a total shit show. And like I've mentioned, my mum, I'm actually waiting for bloods back. But then there's probably people in far worse situations that are on a hair trigger and can't afford even a week. It could be the difference between life and death for some of these people. Having said that, I would assume that the reason the HSE was attacked or was the victim of hacking attack or a cyber attack was because it's easy to do it. You know what I mean? Due to the gross mismanagement of our health service and its resources, and it has been grossly mismanaged. We discussed it before about the sort of 150,000 person increase in the outpatient waiting list in Simon Harris's tenure. We discussed the nurses' issues. We discussed the fact that he inherited that from Leo Varadkar, and how all of these motherfuckers are on exponential amounts of money. Taking all of that into account, the computers and the software being used by the HSE are archaic. They're obsolete. And that is a direct result of the mismanagement. Like, you talk about them, it was mentioned, the most expensive children's hospital in the world, 2 billion them fucking muppets priced that bad boy for. 2 billion. That's the sort of mismanagement of the health service, the mismanagement of its resources and funds that I'm talking about, that was overseen by Simon Harris and Leo Varadkar. It's because of that the software being used is archaic and by default sort of vulnerable to cyber attacks. I'm pretty sure they use Google Drive, for fuck's sake. That's what they use. And so I said before, why couldn't you hack the banks and all, lads? And probably it's really hard to hack the banks, but if you're going to, don't fuck with the normal, everyday, sick people. Don't be total pieces of shit. You know, use the power you have to increase the wealth or prosperity of normal, everyday people, not to fuck them up. So on one hand, I criticise the target of these cyber attacks, but at the other hand, and probably more importantly, I criticise the mismanagement and the mismanagement of funds that has led to a situation where they can't spend money on the proper software and hardware to ensure the security of the situation. It's a fucking joke. And it's going to cost whatever they thought they saved by cutting corners and getting fucking Windows XP or whatever. They're going to pay that. It's going to cost tens of millions of euros to fix this situation. And God knows who's going to die in the interim. It just seems, it just is another sort of little shred of evidence as to the ineptitude or inadequacy of our government and the way in which they handle our health service. And like I've said before, that is now, in my opinion, why we are under the most intense lockdowns nearly in the whole world. I think we've had more work stoppage days than any other country in Europe, for definite. And again, that's so we don't highlight the ineptitude and mismanagement of these fucking douchebags. It's all right to destroy all your businesses and livelihoods. It's all right if you don't have a home. You know, fuck off. I read this other thing recently and I just was like, that is crazy. Surely this is crazy. And, you know, I'm not saying I speak a lot about weed and my own sort of issues with with drug abuse, and how, as much as I think that weed is a whatever, not necessarily a dangerous drug, the abuse of any drug or stimulant is dangerous and bad for your spiritual health, right? But one thing I read, and here is a story that will actually, I think, make you a bit sick. Make me sick. Where is it? Where are you, you fucker? Here is a story again in the Irish Examiner about a man who pleaded guilty to €4 worth of cannabis. A man has pleaded guilty to possession of cannabis after saying he uses it for long-standing pain because, as a former heroin addict, he is wary of the medication he has been prescribed. Paul Lee, 18, The Heights, Drumlee, County Cork, pleaded guilty to possession of €4 worth of cannabis and a grinder when Gardaí searched his apartment under warrant on June 19th last. When he provided Gardaí with the nominal amount of drug, he said it was for his own use. You fucking damn, what's he selling? €1 spots? What you catching with, Guard? 4 €1 spots? Let me just start with this. Even the fact, what a fucking waste of resources that the manpower and resources involved in getting a warrant, searching this man's house, bringing him to court and convicting him of €4 worth of weed. I don't know how the judge didn't laugh it out of the fucking courthouse. And now in fact, I do know, because they sort of justify that part of it. He has osteoporosis and is awaiting an MRI scan, an ex-heroin addict. Mr. Lee said he had come to Ireland many years ago to escape a heroin addiction when he was younger. Mr. Fleming, his lawyer, said that Mr. Lee had been prescribed medication for the pain he was suffering, but that it was of an opiate-based nature, and he is afraid of that, and so he doesn't take it. Like, that's a really interesting thing. And it touches on, like, in this country we have a methadone program. If you're on methadone, you're drug free, apparently, on paper. But the fact of the matter is that you are seriously addicted to a fucking highly toxic drug. You know? And that's just the way they fudge it. It's more, you know, we can sell that. That's political capital. Those people aren't on drugs. They're in a recovery program. And so here's a guy who has recovered, like, you know, I have no idea what being a heroin addict is like, but I'm pretty sure it's probably fucking intense. And here's a guy who comes full circle and gets out of that situation. And to deal with the pain from his osteoporosis, he's offered opiate-based drugs. And he doesn't want them because he fears that he will become a heroin addict again. So he smokes a little weed, and it's great, and it works for him. Like, what the fuck is wrong with that? How could you incriminate or criminalize a man for that? Like, any human being, man or woman, child, I don't give a fuck. Catch situation 2, blah, blah, blah. So, Judge John King said he would not consider community service until I know he is clean. Mr. Lee said he would engage with that process with the probation service, and the judge directed that a probation report be prepared for later in the year to include 2 random urine analysis tests. That poor fucking man has been through the ringer. He's an ex-heroin addict, and all he wants to do is have a fucking few smokes to deal with the pain from his osteoporosis. He's on a waiting list to get an MRI scan. And the judge didn't just throw that out of court and go, lads, what are you even bringing this to me for? How the fuck can you be convicted of €4 worth of weed? What do you get? And the judge is saying he won't. So basically, if you get in trouble with the police and they agree to let you enter into the probation service, you're not off the hook. You have to go through whatever it is, but you're not going to jail. So in order for the judge to say he won't even consider the probation service till he knows the man is clean, what he's saying there is that if you smoke any weed, I'll send you to jail, motherfucker. If you smoke any of that natural thing that helps combat the pain that you feel as a result of your osteoporosis, I'm going to send you to jail. You have to take these state-sanctioned, far more dangerous and addictive opiate-based drugs that could actually send you spiraling out of control and back into the depths of your heroin addiction. That's what you have to do, or you're going to fucking jail. And he can't even sort of fluff it and go, yeah, whatever, mate, I'll do the probation. He has to fucking, now there's 2 random urine analysis tests hanging over his head. He just can't smoke weed. The only pain relief and fucking, and you know, psychological, mental relief probably, or maybe, that the man ever gets is gone now. And the fucking danger is, if you smoke a joint, you're going to jail. And like, how much money would it cost to keep the man in jail for however long? Like, what the fuck are we even having this conversation about? How the guards would waste time and resources to try and convict that man is a fucking joke, but I'm not surprised. But how a judge could fucking give that oxygen is beyond me. How a judge could take away the only thing that makes that man's situation bearable and threaten him with jail. Like, who the fuck is he hurting? It's just ridiculous. It's a disgrace. You know, it's a total disgrace. Because the guards are all smoking weed. They're all snorting coke. They were found in the toilet a couple of years ago, banging Charlie up their nose. Like, everyone takes drugs. And we're going to move on to a few sort of international topics. But one thing I saw recently, and I just thought, poor old Jim Core. Jim Core tried to, I don't know if sue is the right word, but he got onto the press ombudsman about a defamatory remark made about him in some paper. I can't really remember. I'm not going to look on my phone. Basically, what they referenced him, and he's not even a part of the story. In fact, you know what? We're going to have to read it because it was fucking really interesting. Because basically, it was defamation. They did, hold on, we'll just go into it here. So, it's the Journal. It says, Press Ombudsman dismisses complaint from Jim Core over Irish Daily Mirror's online quack comment. The Office of the Press Ombudsman has found that a characterisation of musician Jim Core as an online quack has not breached the Press Council's Code of Practices principle for truth and accuracy. In a decision published today, the Press Ombudsman has not upheld Core's complaint to the Ombudsman over an opinion column published in the Irish Daily Mirror on the 11th of December. In one reference, the columnist commented that, unfortunately, a lot of ordinary people are taking medical advice from online quacks like Jim Core, rather than scientific facts from doctors and scientists. I take exception to that, right? Because the only scientific facts from doctors and scientists that are published in the likes of the Daily Mirror or I've discussed this before, are beautifully impartial press outlets. the only scientific facts presented in those publications are scientific facts that align with the narrative from our government. There are other scientific facts and statements out there that are given no oxygen in these things. And so the second reference was, hardly a day goes by when Jim doesn't tweet something less than complimentary about vaccines to his 43,000 followers on Twitter, although, as far as I know, he has no medical qualifications. The person who talks the most, the person who we listen to the most about the global vaccine program, and we'll get onto him in a minute, our good friends Bill Gates, has absolutely no medical qualifications. None whatsoever. But is he called an online quack by the Irish Daily Mirror? No. In response, Core submitted a complaint to the office, blah, 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 truth and accuracy, as contrary to what was published in the article. He was not an online quack. He also stated that it was inaccurate to state that he did not back his opinions. This is so badly written as well. Like, look at that. He also stated that it was not inaccurate to state. And there was another one up here. In a decision published today, the press ombudsman has not upheld Core's complaint to the ombudsman, to themselves. Like, what a fucking idiot wrote this article. That's the sort of standard of journalism you see in Irish publications these days. So, most often backs all comments with robust medical and scientific evidence, and potentially he does. Core also claimed that incited her. The report states that the reference to online quack in the column is certainly provocative language. However, the report goes on to state, but given Mr. Core's activity on social media on vaccination, and given that in his submission Mr. Core does not deny his opposition to vaccination, I believe this remark is not a breach of principle one. So basically what they're saying is that the press ombudsman and the truth and accuracy is not relevant, does not apply to people who go against the narrative, the vaccination narrative. Couple of interesting international things. This one blew my mind. I couldn't believe it when I read it a couple of weeks ago. That Bill and Melinda Gates are filing for divorce after 27 years of marriage. She obviously couldn't listen to his messianic bullshit anymore. Not even your missus could stomach you, Bill. Not even your missus wanted you to climb up on top of her with your wrinkly, pockmarked face and fuck her. You're disgusting. But one of the reasons I thought it was mental is because, like, here's this, like, character, Bill Gates, who's married, and he has this sort of messianic thing going on where he's a technocratic fucking nutcase, and he goes around dictating to people he gives money to, effectively. And he's meant to be, you know, so he's sort of got this infallible thing going on. And he's married to Melinda French Gates, and they've been doing the most amazing altruistic work. They've given away all their money. If you were in a relationship, if you became the richest man on the fucking planet, and you married some woman, you were in love with her, and then you took all that money and you said, let's do great shit with it, let's be fucking altruists and save the world and fucking end world poverty and child mortality and all this stuff, and then you actually achieved those things, which is the narrative. They've been saving the world for 20 of those 27 years or whatever fuck it is. And, like, if you were in a relationship like that, would not that be the fucking best relationship in the world, to really feel like you were making a difference? Really feel, because they're not. It's bullshit. They're not saving the world. They're not stopping infant mortality. They're not increasing the wealth of the poorest people in the world. They're not, you know, doing all these things they say they do. They're not philanthropists. They're full of fucking shit. And obviously she woke up and smelled the fucking... I just thought it was really interesting that in the midst of this fucking, like, omnipotent sort of relationship, dynamic, people, what they do, it's all falling apart. She wants nothing to do with him. She can't even look at him. If she now has the opportunity to tell him to sling his fucking hook, why can't we? Why do we have to listen to him? But I just... So straight away, I thought it was really interesting. Like, really interesting. It's like, wow. Obviously, everything is not as perfect as they would lead you to believe. And then it turns out a few days later that she wants to give him the flick since 2019 because he's been knocking around with Jeffrey Epstein since 2013. Spent a night in his house and all in New York City. And again, then it goes on. So like, she's really nervous about his relationship with the fucking convicted sex criminal, a person who was going to spill the beans on a whole plethora of international pedos until he was murdered in his jail cell by some fucking ex-cop. She didn't want to have anything to do with that. She was obviously disgusted by that. She found that there was something totally not cool about that and started looking into how to divorce this motherfucker. And I thought that was pretty interesting because apparently Bill has been trying to fuck everything that moves in Microsoft for many years. And he and another head of finance or something have gotten themselves into hot water on more than one occasion. And it's just like, there's his history. That's who he is. He's a fucking little creep. His own wife doesn't want anything to do with him. So what the fuck are we giving him oxygen for? When can we divorce Bill? And will we get any of his money? Old Bill Gates has been shiting on for the last 12 months about how, you know, what we really need to see happen here is the whole world needs to become he's mad for this global vaccine program that's going to save the world. It's the only way out of coronavirus. And I seen this thing on Russell Brand and he makes a really good point, and I just wanted to highlight it while I was going on a rant about old Bill and his shriveled up little dick. That's a horrible thing to call Melinda. There are poor countries who are turning around and saying, look, can we have the blueprint for the vaccine and we'll make it ourselves because we can't fucking afford it. And if you thought that, you know, this mass vaccination program was the only way to get the world back on its feet, and this is a point that Russell Brand makes, I just thought it was so interesting that I wanted to reiterate it. I'm not trying to plagiarize, I'm just trying to recommunicate. If that was your main objective, your end goal was this sort of compassionate, altruistic thing, then surely when these companies who are totally capable as well of making these vaccines en masse for their own poor people, why would you deny them that? And that's what he's doing. He doesn't want that to happen because Bill's main concern is not, you know, the well-being and vaccination of the whole planet. He doesn't want to make sure everyone's vaccinated. He doesn't want to make sure that there's 7 billion people vaccinated. He wants to make sure that the companies he's invested in sold 7 billion vaccinations. That's what he really wants, because he's a piece of shit. Ask his wife. Even she can't fucking stand him. What else has been going on around the world? Oh, man. Those dirty Israeli motherfuckers are at it again, huh? The fucking hound dogs. Palestine is fucking gone. All right? And we need to get our heads around this. The West Bank will be gone. Gaza will be gone. It's over for Palestine. There's nothing we can do about it. We said fuck all for too long, and now it's too fucking late. Since the 30s, the Zionists have a motto or a slogan that says, from Jordan to the sea. And they are going to get that. That is going to happen. There is nothing you can do about it. And that's a fact. It's happened. The only thing we can do about it is shame and ridicule those motherfuckers. I saw a thing recently that back in 2014, Richard Boy Barrett, fair fucking play to him, totally tears apart the then Israeli ambassador to Ireland. Tears him apart. And your man in this real fucking passive-aggressive, smug, fucking chosen one bullshit starts going, you know, the fact that you say you're not an anti-Semite really raises some questions for me. That's how he fucking answers some legitimate concerns, or it's a diatribe, definitely, but it's legit. It's all totally true. It's just calling them out for what they are, fucking human rights violators of the worst kind, scumbags. And the guy just turns around and sort of, and this is in fucking European Parliament or somewhere like that, he just sort of vaguely accuses Richard Boy Barrett of being an anti-Semitic. Now, there is a documentary out there, and it used to be on All 4, and now it's not, and it's actually difficult to find. I've never, ever, ever once seen it on a streaming site, and it's called Defamation. And it's about an Israeli Jew who had grown up in Israel and had consistently throughout his years read stories about anti-Semitic attacks anti-Semitic attacks around the world and in Palestine and other places like that. And he was interested or intrigued because he'd never experienced anti-Semitism firsthand. So he wanted to go out and find some for himself. And he hooks up with the Anti-Defamation League, who actually go around generating money of erroneous fucking anti-Semitic attacks so that they can repatriate people, Jews from all over the world, into recently stolen Arab homes. That's what they do. They pull Arabs out of their homes and they bring repatriated Jewish people in order to make it Jewish entirely, I suppose, the whole population. And so this documentary is really interesting because what he finds out is that the Israeli government perpetuate the Holocaust in order to validate their disgusting foreign and domestic policies. That's what they do. They do it under the guise of never forgive, never forget. Now, I'm not trying to be a Holocaust denier or anything even close to that. I'm not trying to say that I think the Second World War and the Holocaust was the last real axis of evil, the last real duality between good and evil. Like, you don't see that. From then and now, it's all just phallic fucking money wars. But that was a real sort of duality at play there, with a real fucking malevolent force on one side of the situation. Hitler, obviously. And I just think that you use that atrocity or those atrocities, the Holocaust, to kill people, to ghettoize a nation and fucking brutalize men, women and children because of the colour of their skin, because of their religion. That's what you're doing. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's what you're doing. And you do it under the guise of never forgive, never forget. If anyone says that, they're a fucking anti-Semite. But what a kick in the face to the fucking 6 million Jews who died during the Holocaust and the millions more who lived through absolute hell on earth. What a kick in the face for them to sort of validate your own disgusting torture with their torture. How could you do that? Do you think the people who died in the Holocaust want you to murder little children in their name? And then let's not forget that there was millions and millions and millions more people who died in the struggle for liberation. And do you think that, as far as I'm concerned, it was all in vain if you allow this to happen to the people of Palestine? It's disgraceful. They dropped a bomb in the middle of fucking Gaza that killed 20 people. 9 of those people were children. Some of them burnt to death. Anyone out there with kids, imagine that. Imagine your kid being blown literally limb from limb. Imagine them burning to death. And then imagine the people who did it going, parading that incident to their electorate as a victory. Because apparently they killed 3 Hamas. We don't give a fuck about those people. We killed 3 Hamas. And the thing about it is that they actually don't give a fuck about those people. Talk about a whole nation of Joseph Mengeles. That's what Israel has become. They consider the Palestinians to be subhuman, and therefore any abuse of their civil rights is moot because these aren't even humans. They don't have civil rights. That's what the fucking attitude is. That's how you can stand aside and let kids burn to death, shoot them in the head from fucking 500 yards away. That's how they do that. And they actually do another really clever thing. They brainwash them. They brainwash all the young Israelis from a very young age through 2 practices. Number 1, you go on a school trip as a 16-year-old to Auschwitz. You are told that there are people out there who still want to kill you, that the Holocaust, the neo-Holocaust is just around the corner. They even send Mossad agents with you just to fucking hype it up, just to really galvanize the idea that you are not safe because everyone's an anti-Semite. And they do that to adolescents. What are they meant to think? And then they also make you do your fucking year's conscription in the Israeli Defense Force. And again, it just goes to further sort of remove any sort of humanism from themselves and the Palestinian people. It's like you can fucking shoot a kid in the face if you think they're if they think they're subhuman. And I mean, is that not gone? Is that attitude of a chosen race not gone? Are we not totally not all right with that these days? we're chosen ones, so we can kill these brown people because they're not. Fuck off. I'm not in for it. I don't go in for it. Divinity, chosen, it's bullshit. You're bullshit. You're full of shit. You're a scumbag. And so all that is left to do, because it's over, as I've said, is shame these motherfuckers. Shame them. I just think shame is what these people need. We need to shame them to death. And here's another mad, ironic part of it. Is right at the end of the Second World War, the Americans, under Operation Paperclip, went to the Nuremberg trials, literally, and took thousands, about 1,600 top scientists and doctors, and brought them back to America. Under the sort of and paraded them as the good Nazis. Sure, fucking Werner von Braun, the head of NASA, it designed the V2 rocket, you know. And so they went over there and they took all these people, and so they integrated these fucking war criminals back into their society, and they went on developing weapons and other things. And here's the thing is, they were the top scientists and doctors of the time because they were allowed to conduct fucked up experiments on Jews because they considered them subhuman. I wonder why, at what sort of centrifugal force does a body tear apart? Let's find out. I wonder at what temperature do people actually freeze to death? Let's find out all of these fucked up things. What happens when you sew two people's nervous system or blood systems together? This fucking disgusting, barbaric shit. And I seen some of that stuff in the Imperial War Museum at the Holocaust exhibition. So they take those fucking perpetrators, they bring them over to the States under Operation Paperclip, they integrate them back into society, and then become the biggest ally of Israel. And Israel go and do the fucking same exact thing that the Nazis did. That's mental circle of death and misery, isn't it? If you can find that documentary Defamation anywhere, check it out. It's fucking mind-boggling. This is one of the most non-current affairs that we talk about, and it happened really quickly. It happened about the time that I put the last podcast out, or number 10 maybe, but it happened really quickly. And it was the formation of this European Super League for football. And I had this conversation with Rob when I was telling him how hopeless it was because this system is now working even more for the neo-capitalist swines that control the world, the puppeteers. And one thing he said was like, what about football? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, no, that's killing. It's killing, like the Premier League is dying on its arse. They have to get that back up and running. They need 50, 60, 70,000 people in the stadiums every week in order to survive. And I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty valid, all right, isn't it? Because that's not going away, is it? And then, a few weeks after me and Rob were having that conversation, about a month ago, or whatever, a few weeks after our conversation, this thing about the European Super League comes up, and I was like, fucking hell, here we go. Some fucking international group of billionaires has devised a way to keep the whole shit show going in this sort of weird Hunger Games-esque sponsored utopia. They're not even going to have fucking crowds, I don't think. It'll just be fucking billboards where there used to be people chanting for their home team. It'll just be billboard telling you that you're too fat and you're too ugly and you don't eat enough of this fucking beige carcinogenic food, or you don't drink enough of this fucking, whatever. That the environment that we've created that is unsuitable for the human spirit is fine. This is the sort of thing that it was looking like it was going to turn into. And 6 English teams signed up for the European Super League. And then the FA and UEFA, or whoever the fuck, sort of stuck their 2 cents in and said, well, you won't be allowed to play in the Premier League and you won't be able to play in the Champions League if you become a part of this. And that wouldn't have been the decider. That would not have been the deal breaker. Money would have been the deal breaker, because basically to combat that, the people in charge, because they were going to get 3.5 billion per club to sort of float everything for a while. So, UEFA or the FA not allowing them to play in the Champions League or the Premier League would not have been the deal breaker on that situation. It would have gone ahead anyway. What the deal breaker actually turned out to be was the most beautiful thing it could have been. The deal breaker turned out to be normal, working class people saying no. This was announced on a Sunday, and there is billions and billions and billions of pounds involved. It was announced on the Sunday. By Tuesday, every single English club had pulled out because the supporters, the people who make those clubs what they are, the people who made them what they were in their genesis, at their embryonic stages, normal working class people came out in their thousands and said, no fucking way. No fucking way. And it crumbled, it crushed, it decimated a fucking, a plan for billionaires to make more billions. That is the most amazing display of people power that I have seen potentially in my lifetime. I'm not even a fan of football. I don't give a fuck. European Super League, I don't give a fuck. It's gross anyway. They get paid too much. They're fucking little fools. But like I said, that was a serious display of people power, and it made me think, fucking hell, that's great. But let's, why can't we apply that same people power, that same cohesion, that same mobilization? Why can't we apply that to the aforementioned malevolent issues at play being perpetrated by our governments that we've discussed today in this podcast? Why can't that be the case? Why can't we show the same level of unity around other issues, not just the football situation, but like all the other stuff I've talked about? That would be great. If we could do that every time there was a serious issue, every time that our institution was trying to fuck us over, if we could just go out and say, no fucking way, it's not happening, not on our watch, and it actually changed, that would be the greatest. I would just love to live in that world. And here's the thing, is that it's possible. We are the majority. The power lies with us. So why the fuck can't we get together and make it happen? Huh? I said before, we talk about conspiracy theory stuff for a minute. I read a story, and look, this story is disputed by other people. Oh, well, here, you even saw Senator Rand Paul, or whatever his fucking name is, and Fauci having a go at each other, because I suppose I knew this, but when I looked into it after that Fauci Rand, or whatever his fucking name is, Senator Paul thing, I was like, that's crazy. Let's have another look at that, because I definitely knew about it, but I suppose this just made me look at it in a different way, is that there is as much evidence to suggest that the coronavirus didn't come from the Wuhan wet markets as there is. They don't actually know for definite that that's where the virus originated. That's where patient zero was, because there are reports of there being cases previous to the cluster of cases that came out of the Wuhan wet markets, right? And even more crazy is that there is a laboratory, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, in Wuhan, where the coronavirus originated. And what they do there is they do gain of function research. Now, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is all facts, right? They do gain of function research, which basically means they take existing viruses and they soup them up in order to see where we could get, what could be the worst possible situation, and then sort of premeditate ways to combat those situations and those super viruses. But they do that. They do gain of function research where they soup up these viruses. And then the next thing you know, we have this fucking crazy souped up virus coming out of exactly the same place. Now, I'm not saying that either way that it came from the wet markets or the Institute of Virology, but I just think it's a little bit suspect that just down the road from where just down the road, or literally in the same town where this virus originated, they do gain of function research to soup up viruses. And I'm not saying therefore there's a conspiracy theory at play where someone did a fucking biological attack, but just even through some shitty regulatory system or human error, it could have just come out of there. And so, I mean, that for me is as plausible as it just came from bat soup. I mean, in fact, for me, it's more plausible. It's it just seems more possible to me that the virus came from a place where they make viruses, you know what I mean, than a market where they eat all types of animals. Now, I might be wrong, and there's all those whatever, where it hops from animal to animal and then gets consumed by a thing. And we know that that does happen, but I just think it's really interesting that they were doing this sort of shit in the exact same town. Is that not a bit suspect? Is something not a little bit rotten in Denmark? But anyway, you will be called a conspiracy theorist and a nutcase for saying that. And I've said before that if you sort of talk about any narrative that's outside of the government's narrative, the international narrative of the World Health Organization, or our good friend Bill Gates, like if you want to express any narrative outside of that, outside of those parameters, you're a whack job. You're a conspiracy theorist. And I have always been like, oh, you know, it just ends conversations because it's like, oh, what? You're telling me you believe that the virus came from an institute of virology, Ruben? What are you, a conspiracy theorist? And you're like, oh, let's forget about it. The greatest, the longest running conspiracy theory in history is true. UFOs are fucking real. And UFOs are real. They've admitted it. I seen a fucking video of a UFO and a lad, you know, from the Pentagon saying, you know, this unidentified flying object is maneuvering at speeds and in ways that is unfathomable, like that we cannot accomplish with our level of engineering. UFOs are fucking real. And how that is not the headline of every single paper around the world is fucking mind-boggling. You know? It's fucking mental. It just, because what it means is that the governments that have been telling you, or people, and I'm not a fucking big UFO head, I just think it's mental that for years it's like UFOs don't exist. And now we know they do. And we know that the governments who told us they didn't exist have been lying to us for 50, 60, 70 years. If the longest running conspiracy theorist, or if the longest running conspiracy theory of, and I'm going to leave you with this one. If the longest running conspiracy theory turns out to be true, well then what other conspiracy theories are true? And if the governments who labelled these theories as conspiracy theories, if the governments who denied the existence of UFOs for 50 plus years have been lying to us this whole time, what else are they lying to you about? Why don't you just take that with a pinch of salt? Next time you feel like telling someone they're a fucking nutcase and a conspiracy theorist, think about that one. UFOs are fucking real. Listen, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Just a little solo jobby. Bang it out. Next week on the podcast, our guest will be a fascinating man by the name of Paul Ring. We have a wonderful conversation about many topics. And so tune in for that one. Until then, all the love, all the power. Namaste, bitches.
Take another photograph and document a life that's right. And ways consist of simple things, the days of black and white. And faces from a humble past at one with the ground, the sound. And bring me back to that time. These modern folks are hounds now. And just give me one thing to and hold on to, if I could walk in your shoes. Doors were always open then, come in and sit you down. Where is that story man? He's never never to be found. I'm proud of how you got me here, lift the corners of my mouth. So take another photograph, the days are black and white. Just give me one thing to hold on to. If I could walk in your shoes, yours is mine and mine is yours, with lesser appetites, alright. And things ain't like they used to be, ships passing in the night. And hand me down a memory, I'll wear it round the town. Catch another piece in time, the days are black and white. And just give me one thing to hold on to. If I could walk in your shoes, days are black and white. The days are black and white. The days are black and white.